Daryl's reaction to the poem that she drops. Go ahead.
I'm not an orphan.
I ain't no orphan. I heard it over here too. He's super angry. He blows up and his chest is heaving and he's like he's really angry. And how does Sahara feel about that when she realizes like how upset he is? How does she respond? Yeah?
She kind of just like hides in her chair.
Yeah, she hides in her chair. She kind of like slinks down in her chair like, oh, I hope he doesn't notice me. Hopefully nobody knows that she gave him the poem. If I look back in that chapter 2, she mentioned something like, I got the, let's see.
Hey, but now we know Daryl can read. Because he read the...
She said, I could have cried from feeling so scared, and I could have cried for being so terrible, for nearly making the meanest, most special boy in school explode. So
Would that be a record?
those are her words, so that's how she feels about him, and she feels terrible that it happened. So she's hoping he doesn't find out. Folks, could you please close your computer so that you can follow along as we read? Mm-hmm. This is actually...
Do I have to?
No. She's working on her test. So I love the story in this part of the chapter. This is also one of my favorite chapters. Just between the last one and this one, I really enjoy them all. Chapter 11, Why Teachers Get Apples. It had rained, and the fallen leaves made the sidewalk look like the floor of the kindergarten, spattered with red and yellow and green paint. Miss Pointy was telling us another story. It was about a teacher. We listened as we pressed leaves into our leaf identification books. Have you guys ever done that before?
No.
Press leaves into your leaf identification book? No?
What even is that?
It's when you get leaves, especially in the fall, and you identify trees based on the shape or design, I guess you could say, of the leaves. And you can put them in a book and press them between pages. You can even take a crayon and color over the leaves, and it'll leave like an imprint on the paper, and then you can identify it like a maple tree or an oak tree or a pine tree, I guess. Easton, close your computer, please. Thank you, sir. We listened as we pressed leaves into our leaf identification book. Miss Pointy wore a crown of red maple leaves that she had stapled to some construction paper. It looked pretty against her green hair. She was very old. How old? Old enough for gray hair. Old enough for a small hump on her back. Old enough for a squint in her eye. Miss Pointy squinted. She walked to school. She got up early every morning. So early, the morning that the dew was still. She got up so early in the morning that the dew was still on the grass. Raphael burst out laughing. Bah! Did she step in the dew? Miss Pointy's eyes slid, warning him. As a matter of fact, she did, since dew was droplets of water, Raphael. As she walked, the toes of her shoes grew wet from the dew and made little wet half moons on the tips of her shoes. She lived out in the country, and every day she took the same route down the brown path, through the woods, across the clearing, past the play yard, and to the school. Man, why did she drive a car? It was before cars. My grandma's old, and she drives a car. A Buick LeSabre. A few kids called out the makes of their cars, the cars their grandmas drove. I can wait, said Miss Pointy, and she did. Anyway, if you ever lived in the country, you would know why she didn't drive her car. She wanted to see the part of the day when the sun and the moon are both in the sky at the same time on opposite ends. I seen that, nodded Angelina knowingly. That pretty. I like it too. It reminds me of two children at the ends of a playground, two girls who haven't met, who are too shy to come together. I looked at Rachel and smiled. She smiled back. I felt Paris looking at me, and I turned around. In the country, the air smells like snapped green beans, and the crickets are playing their legs. Breep, breep, sang Miss Pointy. And every time you take a step, a mess of them jump out of nowhere. Angelina was getting excited. That's how it is in my grandma's house this summer. Miss Pointy telling it true. Miss Pointy looked at Angelina while she spoke. And isn't there something about being alone when you walk in the country early in the morning, listening to the leaves as they whisper and twist like 100,000 tongues of silver green, straining to tell a secret only to you? We all looked up from our projects, expecting her to turn into a tree from the way her voice went soft like a breeze. A tree has its own language. if you know how to listen. A tree could tell you a story for every ring in its trunk. A story about the storm whose lightning struck it in the spot where children used to climb, or about the bad-tempered squirrel who decorated its dray with diamonds that fell out of a burglar's sack, or about how the tree mourns for the old owl who was so swift and quiet he could catch shooting stars in his claws. Maybe the tree was just saying good morning, said Luz. Maybe, agreed Miss Pointy. Or nothing at all, said Rachel. Or nothing at all, repeated Miss Pointy. Or maybe just humming, or maybe going over tree times tables. We all groaned. Maybe tattling, said Janine. Do trees tattle? I expect so. Most everyone tattles at least once. Yes, Sakaya, more than once, Dominique called out. Everyone laughed. Miss Pointy, Dominique is making fun of me, Sakaya whined. This is stupid. Trees don't talk, or none of that baby imagination stuff. Trees is just trees. Yeah. Daryl reminded us. That's the spirit, Daryl, and teachers are just teachers. So this one teacher walked to school every day past the trees, magical like Angelina's trees, nodded Angelina, or not magical like Daryl's trees. We really don't know, Miss Pointy confessed, but the teachers sometimes thought that they might be magic because sometimes their knots look like eyes and mouths and their branches look like noses and arms. But that could have also been more baby imagination stuff. Daryl looked smug. She walked past these trees into the clearing where she saw the big black crows sowing their bodies through the sky. Then as she walked along further, she saw a farmer's horse cantering along the edge of the clearing. Just want to point out a couple of things. As Sahara likes words that Miss Pointy uses, she writes them in italics, so you'll see it in the book in italics. Those words like do, D-E-W, is written in italics. When you see that in your reading, you might stress that word, like you may emphasize it as you read it aloud. But in this case, because this is what Sahara is writing, she's emphasizing it because she really likes that word. It talks about that here in a second. There's one of my favorite lines in this book that actually just happened. I want you to hear what that word is. And I bet you probably have some good imagery or some pictures that your mind makes as I read it. And I love, the author of this book does such a good job with this colorful language, with painting pictures with words. Her word choice is fantastic. It's almost poetic, but it does such a good job creating the image. Let me read it again. She walked past these trees into the clearing where she saw big black crows sowing their bodies through the sky. Think of that figurative language. Sowing their bodies through the sky. What is she trying to say the crows are doing?
They're going through the sky. Or they're going through the clouds.
They're flying, right? And she could have put, the crows are flying through the sky. And that's good, but this is better. She saw the big black crows sowing their bodies through the sky. Then as she walked further along, she saw a farmer's horse cantering along the edge of the clearing. I scratched cantering lightly onto the cover of my notebook. Finally, she saw a schoolyard full of children. Sounds like a nice walk, said Janine. Miss Pointy wrote the word idyllic. That's in italics, by the way. Idyllic on the board. It was so nice and gentle and full of country charm. It was idyllic. But after 25 years of this walk, she started to get a little jealous of the things she encountered or came across. I wrote these words down too. What do you mean jealous? Well, she would see the birds and think, why can't I fly? She would see the horse and think, why can't I run? She would see the children and think, why can't I play? Man, that's goofy, Larry remarked. To make matters worse, there was a boy in her class. Was his name Raphael? Asked Raphael. Was it Dominique? Asked Dominique. Was it Ernie? Asked, guess who? Ernie. Oh no, I can't remember his name, said Miss Pointy with her mint-in-the-mouth smile. I just remember he was a bad boy. Was his name Daryl? Said Veronica. We all laughed. Shut up! If he bad, that means his teacher's bad, snarled Daryl. You're right, Daryl. Miss Pointy pounced. You're exactly right. This boy was bad, but he was the same bad as his teacher for different reasons. At home, he was beaten. He was poor. When he walked to school, the trees didn't talk to him. When he came to school, the children didn't talk to him. After some time, he started feeling jealous too. Why can't I read? Why can't I write? Why can't I have friends? We became quiet. He couldn't act angry at his father or he would beat him, Paris suggested. He couldn't act angry at his classmates or they'd beat him, Kieri added confidently, like she'd be the first in line. So who's left? Every day he'd be angry at his teacher. It was old times. She could have beaten him. Huh. Those were the days. Miss Pointy sighed. But in 25 years, she hadn't beaten a child. She didn't want to beat him. She had to love him, said Rashonda. Teachers are paid to love children. Teachers aren't paid much, so they don't love us as much, said Larry. Miss Pointy stared at Larry, surprised. Well, most of us. Most don't love us much, he corrected himself. That's silly, Larry. Teachers aren't paid to love children. You can't legally pay someone to love you. Sorry. That's silly, Larry. Teachers aren't paid to love children. You can't legally pay someone to love you, Miss Pointy explained. Loving children is what teachers do for extra credit. It's not the main assignment. Seems to me that the extra credit is more important than the main assignment, observed Cordelia. You're right. Smart, Cordelia, said Miss Pointy, taking out the happy box. Cordelia looked surprised and took a long time to choose a star. Extra credit is done of your own free will. Work and love given out of free will always be more joyous, more quality stuff. Raphael gagged. Come on, quit talking about love. Get back to the boy who got beat. Okay, so there's this boy and his teacher, neither of them working for extra credit. The boy being as mad and as mean as he can be to the teacher, puts a tack in her seat, chalk in the eraser. Oh, old-fashioned mess, grumbled Daryl. And the worst part is he talks back. He talks back like crazy. He won't do a thing the teacher says. He stands up on his desk and he beats his chest and he shouts, yeah, like King Kong. Daryl stood on his chair. Oh! And beat his chest to demonstrate, thank you, Daryl. Just like that. Well, the teacher doesn't know what to do. Every morning she walks to school. She thinks so hard about this bad boy. She doesn't see the moon or the sun or hear the trees talking. Her mind is so full of the hard day ahead. Man, girlfriend needs that trouble basket, said Kieri. Janine and Kieri slapped hands. She sees the bird and the horse and the children and her heart starts to crack. Things that made her happy as a younger person were the very things that made her sad as the days wore on. Every day the boy wouldn't do his work. Every day she felt the lashes of the boy's words like a whip against all of her years of service. Man, she should beat his ass, Rashonda explodes. School language, reminded Miss Pointy. Rashonda, do you think that would work?
Mm-hmm.
Nah, but she'd feel better. Yeah, make her beat his ass in the story, urged Raphael, also forgetting school language. Yeah, he beating her, you said. Words like a whip. Make her whip him back. Let's vote. Who says whip his ass? We are not voting. Miss Pointy, her arms crossed like she does when we're waiting. Stories are not a democracy. Thank God. Finally, we quieted down. I'm disappointed in you, she said finally. She didn't beat him. I told you, she hadn't beaten anyone in 25 years, and she wasn't going to give this boy the satisfaction of breaking her record. Man, you go, girl, whispered Kieri. One day, she gave the children an assignment. What I wish they had to write in their journals. They had journals back then? Well, she was ahead of her time. After she gave the assignment, she realized she gave it because she wished someone would give it to her. Like when I asked Rachel a question, I thought. The teacher took out a blank piece of paper. The teacher wrote simply, I wish I were a bird. I wish I were a horse. I wish I were a child. 3 wishes? Man, she greedy, said Leon. She should have wished that boy out of her school, grunted Tanisha. Well, at the very same time, the boy wrote his wish down. He wrote simply, I wish she was not a teacher at this school. Man, why'd he write that? He could have written anything. He could have wished for $1 million. He wrote that because he knew his teacher would read it. He knew it would hurt her. He wanted to hurt somebody because it felt like somebody was always hurting him. That afternoon, at the end of the day, the teacher collected the papers, took her bag of books, and left the school, walking past the schoolyard, the clearing, and into the woods. And the next day, when the boy came to school, his teacher wasn't there. There was a substitute. He felt a little scared. What for, said Cordelia. It was just a wish. Well, then he felt sorry and wished her back, and they lived happily ever after, and all the trees sang and danced, tra-la-la, said Daryl. If you think you have a better ending than I have, Miss Pointy said, sighing, waiting. Man, be quiet, Daryl, warned Dominique. The replacement was mean. He beat the children. He beat the boy, too. First time he opened his mouth, this new teacher would have none of that. The children didn't defend the boy. They were tired of the way he acted in class. And they were glad that he was being controlled. The new teacher saw the boy who couldn't do much. The new teacher saw the boy couldn't do much, and he didn't call on him. It was nice at first, but then the boy started to feel invisible and empty. He worried that it was his wish that made this happen, but he had nobody to ask about it, no one to assure him that his fears were silly. One morning he was walking along the path, and he heard something that he had never heard before. It seemed to him that the trees were talking in a language that he had heard all his life, yet never had come to understand. He stood still between the school and home. Frightened, he ran off the path. When he stopped running, he saw an apple tree. This cheered him up. And he forgot his fear. He pulled some fruit from the tree and ate on his way to school, the hungry knot in his stomach unwinding slowly. When he arrived at school, he was so satisfied that he skewered his last apple right on the fence post. Out the window, he could see the apple being visited throughout the day by a little bird. He watched as the bird flew in wide circles around and around the school, alighting now and then onto the apple to eat and to sing. The boy felt another knot unwind within him. And time passed. Every day he picked apples from the tree, and he stuck one on the post for the bird. One day, he decided to see if there were any other trees in the woods, and that's when he found his old teacher's bag, sprawled on the ground, and under his teacher's damp books were the last assignment he had done for her. Reminded of his terrible wish, he wondered if wishing it had made it so, but he only wondered for a moment because he was older. Yeah, he had more sense, said Larry. Did he? Well, he took the books and dried them out every day after school. He studied them on his own. Man, why'd he do that? Laughed Raphael. Because it beat going home, said Daryl. I looked at him. Maybe everybody did. Miss Pointy, too. Now, a horse started visiting that post where the boy put his apple. He'd gnaw it off in a bite or two and then gallop around the clearing. Can you imagine how nice it was for the boy watching that beautiful, free creature? More time passed. Do you know what happens when time passes? People get old, said Sakaya. People die, said Rachel. Both of those things happened. The boy got older. His father died. The mean teacher retired and moved away. So the superintendent came in, the boss of the schools. He drilled the class with review problems. The boy who had been so bad shone like a star. The superintendent asked if he would like to teach at that little school when he graduated that spring. He said yes. When the leaves began to fall, Miss Pointy said, picking up some dried leaves from her desk and letting them somersault onto the floor. The doors of the schoolhouse were open, and behind the desk sat a young man with the start of a beard and a mind full of knowledge. No one could have guessed that he was once a hungry little boy who stood on his chair and thumped his chest and was beaten with a strap by his father. No one could have guessed that he had wished his teacher away, or for that all that evilness and sadness, he had remembered to stab an apple on the post every day for his bird and for his horse. He stood at the door and rang the bell, and the children who were playing in the yard came running to the door and filed inside. In came a little girl with brown hair pulled tight and freckles and sunburn and a smile so wide you'd think her pigtails were stretching her face. It's the third wish, gasped Angelina. Miss Pointy smiled. The little girl had in her hand a big red apple, and she handed it to the man. What's this for? He asked the little girl. This was for all the days when I was a bird and all the days when I was a horse. You gave me an apple every day, and now I give you an apple. Miss Pointy took the apple off her own desk and put it on Daryl's desk. Daryl just watched her face and pretended not to notice the apple. Every day the little girl gave her teacher an apple, paying back the small favors of his boyhood. The other children saw this and thought she was trying to be the favorite, and they started giving the teacher apples too. But in his heart, the little girl who had once been his teacher was indeed his favorite. And as the days wore on, there was no little girl happier to be a little girl, and no grown-up happier to be grown up than the two at that school. And their satisfaction was such that there was never a need for another wish. The end.
Wait, that's the end of the book?
What kind of story? No. What kind of story is that, asked Daryl. I made it up, said Miss Pointy, from a dream I had. Did you like it? It's not a real story if you just made it up, is it? Wondered Leon. Yes. Yes, it is, I thought. It'll be real as soon as I write it down. It'll be a real story about a girl who wished it were real. I like it, said Sakai. You would, said Daryl. It's a fairy tale, said Angelina. Ain't no fairies or royalty, said Veronica. It's pourquoi tale, said Paris. We had learned that pourquoi tale means why in French, and pourquoi tales explain why things happen. It tells why teachers get apples. Maybe you're both right, said Miss Pointy. Maybe they're both wrong, said Sakaya. Sounds more like a fable to me. Well, the fable's got to have a moral at the end of the story, Ernie reminded her. Sakaya wrinkled her nose and stuck out her tongue. So if this is a fable, what's the moral? What's the lesson? Said Miss Pointy. We were quiet thinking, watching other kids think. What goes around comes around, blurted Larry. Tit for tat, snorted Raphael. Dominique snorted too. Miss Pointy ignored them. I don't know, Larry. Try to put the moral into your own words. Not a cliche, not something that people have already said before. We thought some more. Wishes come true, said Luz. Good try, said Miss Pointy. But I don't know if that's a lesson that is always so. What else can we come up with? Wishes are powerful, said Dominique. Good, said Miss Pointy. Things change. They don't always stay the same, said Cordelia. Like, you don't have to stay a kid. That's a good one, too. Anyone else? School is a powerful place where things change and wishes come true, Paris said slowly. It's a place where you can grow up if you let yourself. Sounded like a kiss-up answer, but it also sounded right. Miss Pointy took out her happy box. We all looked on jealously as Paris chose a sticker. Anyone else? We all looked at each other. Paris's answer seemed good enough. It got the happy box, didn't it? What's the lesson, Miss Pointy insisted. We were all quiet, and then my wrist twitched. And I started to raise my hand, and the bell rang. Uh-oh, said Miss Pointy. Well, put away your leaf books and let's get going. You spent all that time telling us a story, accused Cordelia. Do you want me to apologize, asked Miss Pointy. Fine. I'm sorry we didn't have time for our journals today. Write in them tonight, though, if you'd like. Write, what would you wish for? We stood up, we gathered our things, and I imagined what everyone else would write. Let me find my remote here.
Downright east and the best.
No, all right.
Here's what Sahara imagines the other kids would read or would write. I want a castle of stickers with a special sticker room, 100 rooms, all filled with stickers, and a real unicorn that I could ride. I wish I was invisible so I could walk home without anyone bothering me. I wish I didn't have to watch the baby after school. I never get to go out. I wish for a robot that looks just like me and that would take all my tests.
I wish I had.
I wish I was a superstar in the WNBA. Sahara's wish? My file, I thought. I wish for the letters in my file. Miss Pointy yelled over the scraping and clonking sounds of us turning chairs upside down, putting them on our desk. The noise seemed to wake me up from my daydream. That's a silly wish, I thought. Of all the wishes, wish for $1 million. Wish to look in Miss Pointy's closet and get to choose any dress I want. Wish Daddy would come home. Wish for something silly like that. Quick, I wrote a P with a line through it over what I had scribbled. Miss Pointy stood at the door and said goodbye to each of us. Rachel stayed behind and started making her watery stripes across the board with a sponge. Miss Pointy grabbed me by my jacket hood. I hung behind. I saw your hand. So what do you think that story was about? Paris said it. Really? Miss Pointy leaned against the threshold and crossed her arms. Stories mean different things to different people. Should I tell her? I looked at the floor. She waited. I waited too, but I wanted to tell her. Well, people thought that the boy was one way, but inside each person, I think there's a secret person. I said, uh-huh. She said, that's interesting. Do you have a secret person inside of you? No. Yes, she does, announced Rachel from across the room, not looking up from her chore. Yes, I corrected myself. I could not look at Miss Pointy. But only you know my secret. You and Rachel. Rachel kept on wiping the board, but she had the same mint-in-the-mouth expression that Miss Pointy wears. And there was Miss Pointy wearing it too. I don't know if that's true, she said. Secret people are hard to keep inside, especially if they're wonderful. You, for instance, you are leaking. I looked up, feeling shy. She was smiling, but her eyes were serious. When I left the room, the hall was empty, but Paris and Luz were leaning against some lockers. Uh-oh. They looked up when they saw me. They cast long shadows in the afternoon that came through the exit. Oh! They're going to beat me up, I thought. They're skinny, but there's two of them. If they're wearing rings, I'm done for. I walked, and I could hear my footsteps clicking. Hi, I said as bravely as I could. Hi, said Paris. She looked nervously at Luz, who looked nervously back at her and stuck her thumbs in the straps of her backpack. Well, I thought this was a very polite way to start a fight. I thought, oh my God, I'm going to get beat up by the nicest girls in school. We were wondering, Paris said. We were thinking of starting a club. Oh? For people who like books, she went on. And stickers, added Luz. Do you like stickers? I looked at Paris, who pursed her lips. I guess, I said. And I know you like books, so we were wondering if you'd like to be in it, said Paris. Who else is in it? Just us, said Luz. For now, said Paris, and then added quickly, but anyone who wants to join can, though, right, Luz? We don't like to leave people out. Luz seemed to nod both her head yes and shake her head no at the same time in total agreement. It was contagious. I, too, shook like a bobblehead. When's the first meeting, I asked. I don't know, said Paris. Let's talk about it while we walk home. We go your way. Can you be at the library this Saturday? Sure, I said. You know what? My mom works at a restaurant, and maybe after meeting there, we could go and eat all the pancakes we want for free. Wow, they said. Yeah, wow, I thought as we walked out of the door together. Here's Daryl's journal entry for that day. Any guesses what Daryl would wish for?
Not bad.
Or what he would write about?
Very, very
His
bad.
teacher to go away.
What?
You think so? His teacher to go
I
away?
think he's gonna wish for
Here's what it says. My Wish by Daryl Sykes. Okay, I am an orphan. I wish for a friend. A, you are not an orphan. You live with your mother. And B, you already have a friend. A, you're not supposed to look when I write P at the top. And B, don't give me that teacher mess. A, sometimes I snoop. And B, I'm not your friend. I'm your ally. A, my mom's not my friend. She's my mom. And B, I don't have anything to write for letter B. A, you've got a friend in this classroom right now, and you don't even know it. Why don't you keep your eyes peeled? B, I also don't have anything to write for letter B. C, wait, I just thought of a B. C, me, I need to help you with your punctuation. How is it I'm supposed to keep my eyes peeled? No, I'll never be able to peel my eyes and look for a friend. Oh, no. Can't be helped. So would you mind peeling my eyes for me since you were kind enough to show concern in that regard? Do you remember where that came from?
Daryl.
At the very beginning of the story when it said she's got eyes in the back of her head. And I believe Daryl had said, like, you better keep your eyes peeled. That was her response to Daryl. Miss Pointy's response. Ha ha ha.
You need to watch your back.
You better watch your back, teacher. So, Daryl's putting it right back to her. Who is Miss Pointy talking about? Who's his friend in the classroom that he doesn't even know? Probably Sahara.
Hey, you